It is therefore ordered that you shall be put to death by electrocution in the mode prescribed by law, and that you shall be transferred to the custody of the warden at the Tennessee Prison for Women. And further, on the 12th day of January, 1997, your body shall be subjected to shock by...
The courtroom feels tense long before the sentence is read. Krista Pike stands there, barely out of her teens, while the female judge prepares to speak. Her tone is measured, formal, almost detached, as if distance is the only way to deliver something this final. She reads from the order slowly, making sure every word is recorded, every syllable unmistakable. Krista Pike is to be put to death by electrocution. The date is specified. The method is spelled out. The transfer to state custody is confirmed. The judge clears her throat and continues, her voice unwavering as she explains that sufficient electrical current will be applied to Krista's body. There is no anger in her delivery, no satisfaction, just procedure, law, finality, and then something unsettling happens. Nervous laughter breaks out in the courtroom. Short bursts, inappropriate, almost surreal. It's the kind of reaction people have when their brains can't process what they're hearing. Krista herself responds in a way no one expects. She makes a comment about playing with her mother before she goes. It sounds flippant, almost childish, but it lands like a punch to the chest. Years later, Krista will say she committed something unforgivable. She will also say she doesn't deserve to die for the actions of 3 people. That contradiction hangs over the entire case. The state sees a ringleader. Krista sees shared guilt. And from this moment forward, every appeal, every interview, every argument circles back to that sentence spoken calmly by a judge who knew there was no taking it back. The story doesn't begin in a courtroom. It begins in Beckley, West Virginia, where Krista Gale Pike is born into a home already unraveling. Her mother, Carissa Hansen, later admits to years of alcoholism and drug abuse. She doesn't sugarcoat it. She talks openly about partying, about relationships that came and went, about priorities that never centered on her daughter. Krista grows up without supervision, bouncing between relatives, learning early that stability isn't guaranteed. Abuse enters her life before she's old enough to understand it. By 9 years old, she's already smoking marijuana. By 12, alcohol is part of her routine. No one steps in. No one draws a line. When she eventually lives with her father, that arrangement collapses too. He kicks her out, citing her drug use and failing grades. Krista ends up in a juvenile institution meant to correct behavior and provide structure. It doesn't work. She drops out of school in the 9th grade, carrying with her a pattern of abandonment and addiction that no program seems equipped to address. It's at the juvenile center that she hears about Job Corps, a fresh start, a residential program, vocational training, a chance to escape everything she's known. For Krista, it sounds like survival. She applies, gets accepted, and moves to Knoxville at 18 years old. The system sees a troubled teen with potential. What it doesn't see is how much damage she's already carrying, and how little emotional armor she has left. On her first days at the Job Corps Center, Krista keeps to herself. She struggles socially. Then a 17-year-old student named Tattleship speaks to her in class. It's small, ordinary, almost forgettable. But for Krista, it becomes everything. Friendship quickly turns into an intense relationship. They bond over feeling like outsiders, over anger, over ideas that make them feel powerful instead of small. Soon, that bond takes a darker turn. They begin talking about the occult, devil worship, symbols, meaning. They were pentagrams openly. For them, it isn't just rebellion, it's identity. Then there's Colleen Slemmer, a classmate, friendly, recently arrived from Florida. Her mother hopes Job Corps will give her a future. Colleen talks to Tattle in class. Nothing more than friendship according to everyone who knew them. But Krista doesn't see it that way. She watches. She fixates. Jealousy takes root and refuses to let go. Friends deny Krista's accusations. They tell her nothing is happening, but she's already convinced herself otherwise. On January 5th, 1995, she tells Shadola Peterson that she plans to kill Colleen. Not hurt her, not scare her, kill her. Later, she tells Tattle that their beliefs require something more extreme. A human sacrifice. Colleen becomes the target. At first, there's hesitation, then agreement. Fantasy hardens in a plan, and once that happens, there's no turning back. On January 12, 1995, the plan moves forward. Krista borrows a box cutter from the Job Corps Center. She brings a utility knife. The group approaches Colleen under the pretense of peace. Marijuana is offered like an olive branch. Colleen believes them. She's happy they want to reconcile. They walk off campus together toward a remote area near an abandoned steam plant. It's dark, isolated, quiet. Once they arrive, Krista attacks without warning, slamming Colleen's head into her knee. When Colleen tries to run, Tattle chases her down and drags her back. What follows lasts nearly an hour. Colleen fights the entire time. Defensive wounds later prove that. Her throat is slashed repeatedly. Her back is cut. A cloth is shoved into her mouth to silence her screams. A pentagram is carved into her chest. She begs them to stop. They don't. Finally, Krista lifts a chunk of asphalt and smashes it into Colleen's head. The impact is so violent the asphalt breaks apart. According to the medical examiner, blunt force trauma ends her life. Only 3 people walk back to Job Corps that night. Krista later tells others exactly what she's done, even producing a fragment of Colleen's skull as proof. She dances, she smiles, she sings, and by morning, a body is found near the university greenhouses, marking the moment when fantasy, obsession, and unchecked damage become permanent reality. The arrest comes quickly. Within 2 days, Christa Pike, Tattle Shipp, and Shadola Peterson are in custody. Krista is the first one questioned, the first one interviewed. Sitting across from investigators, she makes a calculated decision. She waives her Miranda rights without hesitation. 46 pages later, her confession is complete. She tells investigator Randy York that she participated, but insists the plan was never murder. She claims they only wanted to scare Colleen. That thing spiraled. That got out of control. She talks calmly, almost clinically, as if describing a story she watched instead of one she lived. But the details don't align. Investigators already know about the duration of the attack, the number of wounds, the carving of the pentagram, the effort it took to silence Colleen, the force required to lift and smash asphalt repeatedly onto someone's skull. None of that suggests panic. None of it suggests a momentary loss of control. Later, Krista's own words complicate things further. In interviews, she admits she knew exactly what she was doing. She says she was taking out years of pain on Colleen, pain that had nothing to do with jealousy, nothing to do with Job Corps, and everything to do with her past. She also claims she heard voices, that she blacked out, that she dissociated. The problem is that her behavior afterward shows precision, awareness, and even pride. She kept a piece of the victim's skull. She described the murder in detail. She reenacted it. The confession becomes less a shield for others and more a reflection of someone trying to rewrite intent after the fact. By March of 1996, the case reaches trial in Knox County. The courtroom is packed. The evidence is overwhelming. DNA links blood on Tattle Shipp's clothes directly to Colleen. Witnesses testify about Krista's statements before and after the murder. Friends recount her obsession, her threats, her fixation. The jury listens to the confession. They hear about the pentagram, the torture, the duration, the souvenir skull fragment. And when deliberations begin, they don't last long. On March 22, 1996, the verdict is read. Guilty of premeditated first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. 8 days later, sentencing begins. The prosecution paints Krista as the driving force behind the crime, not a follower, not a bystander. The defense argues shared responsibility, trauma, youth, mental instability. The jury weighs aggravating factors against mitigation. When a sentence is announced, death by electrocution, Krista collapses. She cries uncontrollably. It's the first visible crack in the composed, detached image she's maintained. At just 20 years old, She becomes the youngest woman on death row in the United States. Tattleship is later convicted as well, but because he was 17 at the time, Tennessee law spares him from the death penalty. He receives life with the possibility of parole. Shadola Peterson pleads guilty as an accessory and receives probation. The imbalance in outcomes becomes a permanent point of controversy. Prison does not bring stability. It does not bring reform. In 2001, Krista attacks another inmate, Patricia Jones. Using a shoelace, she attempts to strangle her, nearly killing her. Afterward, Krista explains herself. She claims she was being harassed for years, that racial slurs were used, that she was taunted about the electric chair, that Patricia was larger, stronger, and attacking her friend. Whether defensive or retaliatory, the result is the same. Extreme violence resurfaces under pressure. For officials, it reinforces a troubling conclusion. This is not a one-time breakdown. It's a pattern. When Krista feels threatened, rejected, or overwhelmed, she resorts to lethal force. Her own words acknowledge guilt. She says she deserves to be incarcerated for life, that she understands the harm she caused. But she draws a line at execution. She insists dying for a crime involving 3 people is unjust, even if she accepts moral responsibility. That contradiction follows her through every appeal. On September 30th, 2025, the Tennessee Supreme Court issues its decision. The final appeals are exhausted. An execution date is set, September 30th, 2026. For the first time in over 2 centuries, Tennessee prepares to execute a woman. The location is Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. The chamber is ready. Under state law, Krista is given a choice: lethal injection or electrocution. Because the crime occurred before 1999, the electric chair remains an option. The symbolism is heavy. A crime committed at 18, a sentence carried out decades later. A woman who once joked in a courtroom, now facing a date that cannot be delayed by words, arguments, or philosophy. Krista maintains that she did something unforgivable. She also maintains that death is not justice. The state disagrees, and as the clock moves closer to 2026, the case stops being about guilt that was decided long ago and becomes about punishment, responsibility, and whether society believes some lines once crossed can never be answered with anything but death. There are no more appeals left, no more hearings, no more arguments. When the calendar turns to September 30th, 2026, Krista Pike is no longer an inmate fighting a sentence. She is a scheduled event. In the final 24 hours, the prison doesn't feel like a place of punishment. It feels procedural, controlled, quiet. Every movement is logged. Every door opens and closes on a timer. The system no longer asks why. It only confirms when. At this point, the crime is no longer debated. The jury decided decades ago. The courts affirmed it again and again. What remains is the weight of time. The space between an 18-year-old who believed she was untouchable and a woman now waiting for the state to decide how her life ends. Guards check in at regular intervals. Meals are offered, sometimes untouched. A final choice is confirmed: lethal injection or electricity. A decision that once sounded abstract now becomes physical, mechanical, final. Somewhere inside that prison, a woman who once laughed at her own sentencing now sits alone with nothing left to perform for. No audience, no power, no narrative control, just memory. The memories don't come in order. They never do. A childhood without supervision, a relationship fueled by obsession, a walk down a dark path that only 3 people would return from, a stone lifted, a sound that never leaves. At dawn, the facility shifts in motion. Paperwork is signed. Equipment is tested. Witnesses are notified. The execution chamber, untouched for years, becomes active again. By the time the final hour arrives, there are no crowds, no chows, just officials doing what the law instructs them to do. The same law that once read her sentence aloud now prepares to carry it out. At the final minute, there are no speeches, no explanations, no justifications, only a name, only a time, Only a switch, and when it's over, the state will record the outcome in a single sentence. Execution carried out as ordered. The world.